Ladies and gentlemen, down in Cutoff, Louisiana, they like to call this Routee Pork. Y'all stick around. I'm about to knock this out.
HDTV don't mean that much to me, but I got higher definition in my reality.
So we start out by chopping up about 10 to 12 medium to small onions. You're gonna need a lot of onions. Then I bust out that Mild Heat Pi-YAHHHH seasoning. And we season up about 4 to 5 pounds of Boston butt pork that has been cut up into cubes. And you want to season it very generously, toss it around, and keep doing that until the meat is completely coated. Meanwhile, I got a 9-quart pot heating up. I add a little bit of vegetable oil, and I'll wipe it down with this paper towel just to make sure I coat the entire pot evenly. This layer here will help things come up easily in the beginning. So next I add my pork. Hold up now. Did I forget something? There we go. So at this point, I'm just kind of moving the pork around on the top just to kind of spread things out evenly. I want it to sit there for a little bit, and then I'll start tossing it around. Letting it sit a little bit lets the meat release from the pan. Makes it easier when stirring. So now we're going to kind of repeat that process. We let it sit, we stir, we let it sit, we stir. This is just a process of patience, ladies and gentlemen. But eventually, as you're cooking down, you'll start to see some liquids kind of start to come up. And when that happens, that lets you know moisture is starting to release from the pork. And that's a good thing because all that liquid in there is how we're going to form that gratin on the bottom of the pot. And we just keep doing this little process. And as we keep mixing around, that liquid will start to evaporate more and more. And eventually what you'll be left with is the fats from the meat. That's going to form the browning. You'll even start to hear the changes as you're moving it around from when the liquid releases. You hear that? It's starting to sizzle a lot more. That's a good sign right there. We just kind of keep moving this around, let it sit some more, and then we'll form that nice browning layer on the bottom of this pot. Now you do want the browning layer to naturally come, but you have to kind of toss it around here and there so that the moisture can release and that browning layer can form. And then after you let it sit and you go to stir again and you see the brown, you know you got it right where you want it. It's about at this point where you can add your onions to this pot. So what I do is I move the pork to one side, add about half the onions down in there, and then I'll take the pork and move it to the other side, and I'll add the remaining onions in the pot. This allows the onions to kind of reach the bottom of the pot, and what's going to happen is the onions are going to sweat out and break up that browning and really release that color into this dish. So right here, you see me kind of gently stirring the top. I don't want to go at the bottom just yet. I want the onions to sit there, sweat out, and it'll allow things to break up a lot easier. After a couple minutes, I start pulling at it, and you can see the color start to surface. This is a process from here. You got to be very patient, kind of let the onions do their thing, and then gently work the bottom before you start really going at it. So I'm doing just that. I gently stirred the bottom around a little bit, brought some of the bottom onions to the top, but I'm letting it sit again so that the onions can sweat out some more. After a couple minutes, then I'll start digging at the bottom, and you can even feel the difference. That bottom grat is just breaking up a lot easier, and then the color is coming through even more. It's really coming along at this point. It's looking good. You can almost feel a little bit of pressure come off your back at this point too. You know you didn't burn anything. So at this point, we let it sit again, follow those same steps. It's going to brown up on the bottom, and then we start stirring it around. And we keep doing this process till we get a lot of that moisture released from the onions, and we see browning form on the bottom again. It's kind of the same thing you did with the pork earlier, but now you're doing it with the onions so that you can really bring some color to this dish. So like I said before, I'm letting the bottom of this pot brown up, but then I'm continuing to use the moisture of the onions to help break it up again and bring that color into the dish. And I just keep repeating that process till I get to a color I want. Early on, you're going to think, oh man, this is it. I think I got it, you know. And you take a look and it looks really good. It's browning up. But the thing you got to pay attention to right here is that you still see a lot of moisture. So even though the color is really good right here, there's still a lot of moisture in this pot. So we can keep working at it and keep doing what we did before. Work the bottom, let it brown, let it sit, do it again. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is my custom premium oak wooden spatula that is engraved with Pi-YAHHHH. I love this thing, man. It works really good for your coated cast iron pots and just about anything you want to cook in. You know, it won't scratch it, holds heat well and does what it needs to do. If you're interested in one, head over to CajunNinja.com. So at this point, you can see much of that moisture has subsided and that color has come through even more. I know this next time I go to brown the bottom is a good point for me to go ahead and add some liquid. So I add one 32-ounce container of chicken stock gradually to this pot. I use my wooden spatula here to break up the remaining bottom browning, and that will give me that beautiful gravy color that I am looking for. Once I have all the liquid in there, I just keep working the bottom to make sure I've broken everything up. Then I'll let it sit for a bit so that it can come to a slight boil. And once this pot reaches a boil, I cover it up, lower to a simmering heat, and we're going to cook that down for 2 hours. Once that 2-hour mark is up, things are looking beautiful and smelling amazing. But as you can see, my gravy here is very thin, so a nice little trick we can do to thicken this up is add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch to 1/4 cup of water and gradually stir that in throughout the pot here, and that will thicken up this gravy right where we want it. I mean, you could just let it reduce and keep cooking it down, but doing it this way allows you to have more gravy in your pot. And then slowly you will start to see the gravy has gotten thicker, and man, I'm hungry. It's time we serve this bad boy up. Woo. That's the stuff right there. The way I do it, a little bit of corn, a little bit of gravy, and a little bit of meat. Oh yeah. So good.